Welcome to everybody. I am Daniel. I'm the founder of Startup CPG. And I'm really excited to be hosting this webinar here with our friend Leon Lewis from Daybreak Agency. So probably most of you guys know about the community and all of our events, but as much as possible, we really try to do educational content, stuff that really matters, especially leveraging our partners. And Leon is just, I think, one of our closest partners. So we launched a partnership with Daybreak Agency at the end of last year. And the reason for it is because I had heard about Leon and everyone was like, no, that's the guy. If you're an early brand and you want to launch on Amazon, this is the guy to work with if he'll work with you. And so I approached him somewhat meekly. He was like, would you work with us? And then he did. And we absolutely crushed it. And his retainer is super reasonable. It's not the like $5,000 ridiculous retainer that you get from some other agencies. And they do they'll like fix your creative up, make it look much better for Amazon, fix all your listings, get the ops part sorted out for you, and then spend your ad budget really efficiently. And for us, we didn't have a crazy amount of money. I think, we were spending $2,000-3,000 or something like that, but already getting huge results and became the number 2 or 3 even organic ranking SKU in an area of importance for us, which was surprising and wonderful. And just everybody loved working with Leon. So because of that, we're really excited to partner with him. And he's kind of our go-to for all things Amazon now, including this great presentation. So you're going to get to see some of the kind of stuff that we would see when we were working with him. And definitely as we go through, if you guys have questions, throw them into the Q&A, and I'll try to help curate some of those questions for Leon. I may take a little while to come back to some of them. But yeah, I think and feel free to put stuff in the chat, just whatever you want, have a good time. And so I'm going to pass over to Leon just to maybe introduce yourself and we can start going through the deck. But thank you guys again for joining. It looks like we've got a pretty healthy turnout today. So thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Daniel. Appreciate the intro and the kind words and, and everything. I mean, we love being a part of the community, love the CPG space. Like we were chatting about at the beginning, I spent most of my career in the music industry. And, I think when I first came into CPG, I was like, what's this going to be like? And it's been very fun since, joining my first brand in 2015. It was called Health Warrior. And years later, starting Daybreak, we started things very organically and just in the way that I thought was the right way to approach the service space. I never worked at an agency or any of that fun kind of stuff. But yeah, and thanks for joining, everyone. I see a bunch of names I recognize. So, thanks, guys. We really appreciate the support. So, I think Daniel's, setup is actually perfect just because today I really wanted to go through, from, if we were starting with a brand, how do we approach it? How are we thinking about things? How do we think about Amazon today? Amazon's a very different place than, when I first, started with CPG. I mean, my first business was selling ukuleles on Amazon starting in about 2007. So very different from then. But, since starting in CPG in 2015, the space has changed a lot. So we're going to go through a lot of some of the key things we look at. I also think, I'm not going to go super, super deep into advertising here. One reason for that is we think that the discussion around Amazon advertising is exhaustive and there's just way, way, way too much focus put on it. And, ultimately it ends up being, a lot of the questions, a lot of the frustrations that people have, they can be related to advertising, but it is some of the broader stuff. So, we won't harp too much about us and what we do. Our team is, we're 10 people today, which is really exciting. I am based in Richmond, Virginia. We have some other teammates here on the East Coast. The other half of our team is based in India. We have very experienced people based in India. People have always kind of looked at India as a great place to outsource, talent and everything and get that cheaper labor. But that has actually built some very, very, very experienced minds in the world of Amazon. So, that's one thing. We're able to actually have senior people working in advertising and strategy and ops hire some of them directly from Amazon, et cetera, and do so while being able to maintain costs that allow us to work with startups. So that's a really important thing. And because a lot of agencies, frankly, like, there are big agencies in this space that hire people with zero Amazon experience, train them up, and call them an expert a few months later, right? It's just, you can learn it quick, but also just like going around the block a few times really helps. So just a little bit about us. This is some of, who we've worked with. We're small. People really, work directly with me. We don't have this team of junior account managers. Obviously, that limits like what we can, do. We don't try to take on all the business no matter what. We try to help people make really smart decisions in the space, work with them as much as we can. So, with this community, we've had a lot of conversations with, hey, like future clients, but also just like helping people, helping brands just answer questions and understand this. So we'll fill in some of those gaps today. So yeah, let's go through, we'll talk about the state of the Amazon, kind of approaching Amazon from like a high level. How should we think about it? I'm going to go through our go-to-market checklist and then deep dive into 3 areas. Talk about measuring repeat and retention, which is an area I think a lot of people are confused about. And then, we'll kind of, key takeaways, conclusions, questions, all that fun stuff. So,
And just a reminder, if anyone wants to reach out to Leon afterwards, maybe to think about working with him, which I highly recommend, his email is leon@daybreak.agency. And definitely mention us because we have a deal where you get $600 of free design credits from his team.
yeah, love it. Love it. So, I think just to talk about Amazon today and what we're seeing, right? I mean, obviously COVID was, Amazon became a lifeline, for so many people during COVID. It certainly did for us, as did platforms like Instacart and things like that. But now I don't want to say we're past COVID. We'll set that aside for another time. But, we're seeing things flatten out a bit, and we're seeing Amazon become more and more challenging, right? There's a comparatively low barrier, to entry, for Amazon versus retail. There's less upfront fees. It happens, we can get a brand from 0 to live selling on Amazon in FBA in, 35 to 45 days. And, retail just does not move that fast, period, right? But trends are challenging, right? We see that year over year the cost of advertising is just increasing 12 to 20%. Some categories it's going up faster if they're really, really hot. Our average retention with brands is 18 months on average. And so, we have lots of clients that have been with us for a number of years now. We've just seen their cost of advertising double over time. What does that mean? Your ROAS may go down over time, CPCs go up, basically the same amount of money is just doing less and less work over time, right? So that's puts pressure on brands that look to Amazon as a key growth channel, that like, hey, like we actually, have to be really, really, thoughtful about our goals and our outcomes here, because it is a very expensive place. By comparison, like we think about, meta ads and stuff like that today, early on in CPG, like if we had an acquisition cost that went into double digits, we're like, turn all that off. Like this is way, way too expensive, and now people are like, can we get our acquisition costs like below $50? And we know how to do that. So it's really, the market has changed and it's become much more expensive. Amazon, can still move. I was just talking to a beverage brand, there's no one that can move 12 packs of drinks around this country like Amazon can, and certainly no one can touch their cost, right? Amazon knows that. It's not a secret, right? And so they had multiple price increases last year. They had pricing, they have announced price increases this year. The Buy on Amazon program, they're pushing, young CPG brands on really hard. It's pretty expensive if you do the math. It's much more expensive than FBA, so like that puts pressure on brands too. And then growth has decelerated, right? It's not as, insane as it was, in the late 20 teens. Certainly, not like it was during COVID. In 2024, the growth is projected to be, 11.2%, per, Insider Intelligence is a good source for this data. You adjust that for inflation, you're talking 5 to 7% growth, right? And so that's pretty interesting to me, right? So like we're entering a more mature space on Amazon. I always tell people the number one resource on Amazon, the rarest of minerals for Amazon, is time and market, right? The brands that were just doing this 10 years ago, you think of Amazon as an ever expanding web, the closer you are to the center, the more connected you are to everything that comes after, right? The early players win for all kinds of reasons, whether you talk about repeat customers or the algorithm or whatever. So Amazon's still a massive opportunity, but there's kind of these immovable, unmovable like costs and challenges and everything that we have to continue to address, right? And I think that that really begs, looking at Amazon in a really thoughtful way as a new brand, right? I mean, I think, for us, as an agency, as a service provider, we just want to have integrity. We just want to be honest in what we do and really transparent, right? There's a lot of players in the space. And again, I'm not trying to rag on anyone or whatever. We don't have a need to do that. But a lot of people will just take on a business. It'd be like, oh, we're going to blow it up. It's going to be so huge. Your ROAS is going to be amazing. We have this magic money machine. We just need to plug your brand into it. It just doesn't work that way, right? And so, you know, there's a lot of things that we hear from brands. We need Amazon to be profitable from day one. We encourage brands to really look at the realities of the financials, right? And we'll kind of talk through our model today and how we think about that. We have to build a longer term, timeline, to understand growth and profitability on Amazon. There are no secrets, I mean, some agency or, some people come to us and say, well, what exactly are you going to do differently? Like, how are you different than everyone else? Like, I don't really know. Like, we just do it in a way that seems to be working for everyone. There's not this magic angle, that exists out there. You really, I mean, as you're looking at agencies and who you're hiring, like we kind of specifically, like, we don't really do case studies because like a case study is like, here's Mike, here's Mike's phone number. You can just talk to Mike. Mike's our case study. We grew Mike's business by millions of dollars, right? So, that's how we really do it. And anyone that's approaching you over on the world of digital marketing, it's obvious, right? Look at that with some skepticism, right? There's real work and real challenges here. The other thing is like, we do get commentary, and one of the challenges is around COGS and different things like that. We understand when brands are young, their costs can be much, much higher. And obviously, there may be a need to pass that on to the consumer, or you really can't have like a hot trial offer, like you need to sell full cases and stuff like that. You may really want to look at does Amazon make sense, right? I mean, we've been in situations in the past where it's like, hey, we have a great product, but it's very expensive to make at this stage. So we're super comparable to this brand and this brand and this brand, but because we're small and our COGS are high, we're actually like 40% more expensive. It's like, okay, well, that's cool. And we understand that. However, that's really not the customer's problem. Right. And so like one important thing, you want to use Amazon as an early stage to just establish the viability, of the channel for you. Hey, if we're making a hydration powder and we're going up against liquid IV, it's like we know we can get to this price point eventually. How do we really perform there, versus others? And yeah, and I mean, I think, from a margin, from margin perspective, I see a question just came in. Someone asked, what is the typical profit margin you see for brands selling on Amazon with an AOV sub $40? That really plays into this, so I'll just answer it. We typically see a net margin after Amazon fees in the 25 to 35, point margin, right? So retail, your COGS, Amazon takes 15% off the top, and then FBA can vary depending on what you're selling. Hopefully it's small and very light. And we typically see that between 25 and 35 points on average. When you get into 40 plus and stuff like that, great. You may be in a really competitive space if everyone has that kind of margin, and things like that. So we definitely, that's before advertising. Yeah, for sure. So we see that before advertising, and we'll get into how we model that out and how we model growth. So, I think that the other thing that comes into that is, as these channels mature and when we think about planning, brands will say like, oh, we see that, hey, this category leader is doing millions of dollars. Like we want a part of that. How can we do $1 million in our first year? And I think there's some brands that have ventured to do that, and they're just out of business now. It's like, oh, you guys are being way too aggressive across like every channel that you're at, and you really put cart before the horse there. And I think one thing, and we'll get into just a preview of the model. I mean, Daniel, we may just do an entire one of these just talking through those financials sometime. But like, you need to kind of model out your revenue goals versus a realistic investment, right? So I'll give you an example. We have a more mature client, on the platform, and they had a super aggressive, agency, and they were just losing money every month. They were growing a little bit, but not worth the money they were losing. And they came in and they said, look, these guys are not great partners. They haven't shown growth. We don't really want to grow. We want to make money, right? And this is a brand already doing $75,000 a month, right? So they gave us this great guidance, which is just like, hey, can you guys make, like $2,000 a month plus pay for yourselves, and we're good. And we have a tool we can just look at that margin, on a live basis. What is it yesterday, month to date? It's like, hey, we're just totally hitting that net profit goal, right? That's a more mature business. A younger business, you have to have a clear pathway to building that profitability over time. We'll talk about that a little bit. But generally, we like to see brands, being aggressive, really spending on advertising $2,000 to $3,000 a month and getting profitable in year one, right? We can model that. Or maybe it's, hey, I can lose 50 grand this year. Let's go bigger. Cool. The last point, we'll get into this a little bit too. We focus on Amazon instead of D2C. We know nothing about our customer. I've definitely heard that a lot. I think one thing that I'll say is, I've asked the question back, like, can you tell me specifically how you leverage that data? Like, what are you doing day to day that is really affecting your business with the D2C data? In reality, on Amazon, we can understand demographics, we can understand LTV, cohorts, purchase frequency, purchase combinations, basket analysis. There's really not much we can do. We can send emails to people. There's a social feed, what's really missing, right? And so Amazon did all of those things, and they're not necessarily super popular tools on Amazon, but they did them to help close the gap between D2C and Amazon. Because simply put, we have some clients we run, Facebook ads and stuff too. And we see that for every dollar we make through D2C from a meta ad, we will make anywhere from 30 to 60 cents on Amazon, right? Because more and more consumers go, oh, this is pretty cool, but I don't shop a million different websites. Close Facebook, open Amazon, search for it, buy it, right? And so if you're trying to grow D2C, guess what? You're missing an opportunity on Amazon if you're not also there. So, I think one thing is there's a lot of narratives, there's a lot of discussions around Amazon and stuff like that. I think the main thing is really just approach it like you would any other part of your business. Really logically, do that planning and stuff like that. So these are some of the things that kind of come up often. So, you know, today I think kind of the bulk of this, I wanted to just kind of go through, if someone, and these are great questions. I'm probably, if they're not super relevant for the moment, we'll run through them at the end. So like this is just a deck, and everything that I'm about to show you is just from like decks that we would use, for brands when we're first starting out with them, right? Some of it's a bit more elaborate, a lot of it's scrappy. That's how we are. But this is basically kind of, if we put ASAP, because when we start on a business, like, well, we're going to do everything as quickly as possible because we want to go live in like 30 to 45 days or less. And so this is kind of everything that you have to think through, right? The build out piece in the middle is actually like super, super obvious, right? Obviously, you have to get the account set up, brand registry, some of those really practical, things there. Category approvals, a challenge sometime, building the, products and things like that. And that's probably, something we'll cover, in the future at some point, is some of those kind of practical challenges and everything. But the planning piece is what I really wanted to focus on today, because it helps us really look at and answer a lot of these questions about what should I look for, right? So, number one is just kind of deciding on the pack sizes and the pricing for Amazon. We really encourage brands, like if you look across CPG categories and consumables, variety packs 9 times out of 10 are the best sellers, and often the best seller by a wide margin. And so it's not true for every brand, but for many, many brands, having that variety pack early on is really, really critical. You're a beverage brand, you're selling a 12 pack of drinks. I've never had you. What if I don't like it? Now I have 11 drinks I don't like, right? I may as well get 3 or 4 or 5 flavors. It's the same thing, at Health Warrior, previously, like 70% of our business on Amazon was variety packs. We had multiple variety packs, so like that's a really critical thing. And then obviously getting into full cases and stuff, we see that playing more and more of a role early stage for a business. So one thing you that comes up often as a challenge is really an operational production thing is like, oh, like we can't unpack those and make a variety pack. We encourage brands to figure out how to do it like one time so that, so that you can basically, understand if it works, and then you can figure out how to do it all the time. So that's one. The other that we think is really critical is the creation of a P&L and a model, to just basically inform the top and bottom line opportunities. We pair that with discussing that specific category, outline the creative and copy needs. We do that design in-house. We have a great designer, Andrew. And then we also have, Rachel Hauser, who worked with me at REBBL, where we both were prior to starting Daybreak. And that's a really critical piece. So we'll go through just like a typical deck. It's pretty basic, but just some of how we think there. And then Amazon advertising strategy. I'm going to go through that like a bit of a 101, but a 101 and like this is how you're supposed to do Amazon advertising, maybe a little bit different. So, these are really, when you think about going from zero to like we're live on Amazon, these are kind of the 3 pillars, and these are like the checklists, under each. So we're going to go through some of the less obvious. So model building. I try to make this as legible as possible. Hopefully, everyone is on a decent size screen. I have to remind myself that my screen is like, 2 feet wide. But this is an excerpt, from a 12-month model that we would build for a brand. And so this is really meant to be a, ground up from scratch model of what a business can look like on Amazon, right? And so, we build a model that allows us to do a bunch of things. This model is built, each one of these lines is a different metric on Amazon. Your organic traffic, your conversion rate, ad spend, blah, blah, blah. We'll run through all these. But, once we have all these figures and we say, oh, this is our AOV, cool. And then we can build below that. Okay, we know that for each one we sell, here's the Amazon fees associated with it. Okay, here's our presumed SKU splits. We can actualize this. And now you not only have a financial model for Amazon because it will pull in all of those costs, you also have a metric like KPI dashboard, for Amazon. And then, you also, have like a tool you can continue to revisit because, for many brands, I mean, you can see right here, hey, we're saying spend $2,000 a month, and you're going to do $2,065 in month one. Like, what? You're supposed to make us millionaires. Like, you're fired. That's just not how it works, right? We need to understand how month one influences month two and how that builds towards a larger, more profitable business in month 6 or month 12, right? This full model, ends with $97,000 of first year revenue total and a $250,000 run rate by the end of the year, right? And you're making money, but at this early stage, you're losing money, right? And so this is one of the important things where, you have to have a plan. It's more than just advertising, because especially for young CPG brands, COGS, higher, all the things that that we've already talked about, it's if you can't take your presumed advertising, performance and tie that back to a financial outcome, you're just going to lose money and you're going to be frustrated and you're not going to understand where you're going, right? So the most important way to think about Amazon conceptually is Amazon is a search engine that wants to show people what it thinks they're going to buy. Okay. So Walmart.com is what's called a bid first platform. You search for energy drink on Walmart, you see a bunch of ads on the page, you see some organic ranking. Well, all those ads are just, this is the highest bid, this is the second highest bid, et cetera, et cetera. Amazon, it's way more contextual than that. Amazon says, hey, like, we want someone that's bidding the right amount, but we also want the person that has the sales history, right? So that's why when you're starting off as a brand, and you can see this here, your CPCs are going lower, month over month. Obviously, that's a result of testing and becoming more and more informed, but it's also because the algorithm will just sell you the same inventory for cheaper because you've started to prove that you can sell against it, right? That's its number one goal. It's a robot that wants to sell stuff. So as you do that and you prove it out, you're also, many of these CPG products we make are super niche. Hey, we're, a keto cookie mix that's like also gluten-free and allergen-free and stuff like that. It's like, okay, it's very specific what we do. We know where to advertise. It's not rocket science. And we also see that, like, the search volume, for that is locked up in, just like very clear terms. Mushroom coffee is a good example. Tons of mushroom coffee brands out there, ground coffee, K cups, whatever. And it's like 93% of the search volume is just locked up in people searching for mushroom coffee. So, like, what are you going to advertise against? Like mushroom coffee and everything that shows up on that page. It's not hard. So as you convert against that, this is how organic ranking on Amazon works. You start to improve your ranking on Amazon. Amazon starts to recommend you in different places. Your organic traffic grows. As that happens, you start to show up in the right places. You're also getting more reviews. People feel more confident in making decisions. Your conversion rate goes up. You're doing less testing on advertising. You're finding the right terms to, have in a performance state, and your cost of media is going down. You're also dialing in, your conversion rate is going up, and then over time, hopefully you have a very great repeat rate and it grows very quickly, right? And that's one that we'll go into more. I already see a question about repeat rate on Amazon, et cetera. There's a question right here. I'll just answer real quick. Where do you find, we'll go into repeat rate a little bit. Where do you find many of these metrics? Organic traffic and conversion rate. This is just in business reports. This just exists like in Seller Central. Same thing for
Leon,
that. Yeah.
are are you going to go through each of these lines and just explain what they are and
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
people? Okay,
Yeah,
cool. And
definitely.
then maybe when we get to the repeat rate, you could mention where you can find that.
Totally. Yeah. So I mean, organic traffic. So, this is basically like one thing that we're doing here is specifically, removing advertising driven traffic, right? Because that is reflected in ad spend. So, this here. At launch, it can be very low at launch, for small brands.
Is that
We
number, that's the number there is like visits or units
visit,
or
yeah, no, so this would be visits, right?
okay.
So this would be sessions, and then the conversion rate is, you would convert 8% of those 500, visits, right? So that, then creates this organic orders line down here, right? This is just organic traffic times your conversion rate. And
Okay.
then, your ad spend. So this is our ad budget. And then, basically, and we recommend $2,000 minimum to move the needle monthly, right? So if you're super early stage, you're thinking about being on Amazon, you feel like you need help with it, you have to think, you're gonna really need to be able to spend $2,000 to $3,000, a month on advertising just to build any of this momentum. Because again, conceptually, ad spend can grow your organic traffic. So, you divide your, ad spend by your, anticipated CPC. So whatever 2,000 divided by $3.75. And then like of that traffic, you would convert 8% of that traffic, right? So, ad budget divided by CPC times the ad conversion rate. Now you have your ad driven orders, right? So these lines up here calculate your organic orders, then your ad driven orders. Obviously in month one, we're not generally not going to have repeat orders, maybe someone's mom, stuff like that. So, but then over time, like, 10% of, the customers in month two are repeat customers. So that would be 8 of them. And, that gives you your total orders. And then obviously multiplied by your, AOV, that gives you your total revenue. And then we calculate, one important thing is called your tacos. So tacos is your total advertising cost of sales, right? So you see in month one, our ad percent of sales is 96.8%. Well, that's because we spent $2,000 and we're doing $2,065 of sales, right? And like we presume this, I mean, sometimes like we put this in front of brands and they're like, oh, that's it. It's like, well, this is what like we're gonna do, right? Like if you guys blow up or you announce some huge, celebrity partnership, or you are, in going into 5,000 new doors, that's all going to affect this. But this is really like an Amazon side build, right? It's like, what can Amazon do for the brand? Anything incremental is awesome. But,
So Leon,
yeah.
there are a bunch of questions coming in now that we're getting into the good stuff.
Okay, good.
So I think just to put a little context around these numbers. So let's say if we start with the well, actually first with the organic traffic. So that's a number that you're just going to get through your Amazon reporting. You're going to know how many people are coming to your page kind of organically.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's like, is that like a typical number that you would see for like an early stage brand around, let's
This
say
is,
500?
yep, this is definitely typical for like, the first few months. Absolutely.
Okay. And then conversion rate of 8% on your organic traffic. Normal, good, bad.
Yeah. So this is I mean, I'm not going to say that it's high. It's definitely not low, right? Our goal is to build a really great listing, right? That's meant for conversion, right? And so that's, so an 8% is like, oh, we've done a good job at like presenting your product to people, right? Over time, this will grow, as you see here, to 9% or 10%. As brands grow, we see we see conversion rates in the 20 to 30% range, right? But this is really from early on. We typically aim for, and it's the same thing with advertising. From a strategic perspective, we really aim to convert at least 10% for advertising, right? So like for this ad conversion rate, that's a little bit low because it reflects this is month one, like we're doing testing, we're figuring out what works for us. But the goal is to get into consistent double digits. So if, hey, if you're on Amazon today and you're like, what's good? Like, is this guy going to tell me what's good? You really should be double digit conversion across Amazon. So like your organic traffic, total traffic, and double digit conversion, for your advertising efforts, right? So if you have an agency and they're like, hey, here's everything we're spending on, it should show the conversion rates. And if you have a bunch of money going into something you're converting 3% against, why? There's got to be better places to put that money, or you need to look at your listings or your pack size structure and stuff like that. So this is built on goal metrics. This is what we like to see for early stage brands right out of the gate. We typically hit it. Usually these models, we have a client who like we made this model, and I think at the end of last year we were like within $1,000.
Well,
And
yeah. Yeah, I will just add, like from having worked with Leon, I will say he's a guy who says what he's going to do and then does what he says. Which
yeah,
it's not going to be some rosy picture, but when we saw the model with him, I mean, it was blown out to 12 months, and you see where it turns into the kind of numbers that you want to see. But obviously, you have to do all the work to get there. And somebody had asked about profitability. So, like you as a brand, you're not going to be making like real profit in these first couple months because even if you have more revenue coming in than your ad spend plus let's say a small retainer for an agency fee, like what's your product margin, right? So you're not going to be profitable at that point, but we did see a really good path to getting profitable and then actually get there over time.
yeah.
So it's not good. I think it would be unlikely. Somebody had asked if it was usually like 3 months to see profits. Probably unless you have some crazy profit margin, I wouldn't expect that. But I mean, I think like any channel, like invest in it. And then, if you work with someone like Leon, he'll build the model out for 12 months so you can see where it should theoretically turn. And then one other question was on the repeat rate. So it starts at 0 because people just started buying the product. No one could have repeat purchased yet, right? But
Yeah.
like, what do you see as a good mark for brands? Like, when they're a year into working for you, where do you hope that they'll be, or 3 years in?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think for repeat, we definitely actually I have a slide on it, so I'm going to jump forward. We can come back. So we typically see, where on average, actually I'll go back. This is how most brands look at repeat, right? So they say like, okay, hey, we have a 20% repeat rate. If you want a simple answer to the question of what repeat rate do we like to see on Amazon, it's generally 25 to 35%, right? If we see that it's like, oh, we have like 55% of our customers are repeat customers, like, well, let's go get some new customers, right? It's like too high past a certain point. But repeat rate, like even in, Shopify and stuff like that, like it's very flat. It's a very two-dimensional way of looking at it. Because like, okay, I had 100 customers this month and 20 of them were repeat customers. Cool. But and that data is pretty easy to access in the brand analytics tabs on Amazon. They've gotten a lot better at sharing it. But what you should really start to look at is, most of us are making and selling consumable products, right? So, hey, if someone buys it once, cool. If they buy it twice, great. But like I'm telling them a 30-day supply. So we really should be measuring, hey, like this is a chart that's like you had 9,000, customers that placed their first order. Well, of those 9,000, 20% of them have placed at least a second order. That is a good measure. We actually see, again, that 25 to 35% repeat rate is very flat because this is your repeat customers, even if it's someone's second, third, or 10th order, right? So we really look at how many people have placed their third or their fourth or their fifth order, because this is what tells you if people love your product, right? Getting someone to try it. And if you look at the world of investment in CPG and stuff like that, and the venture sharks of the world and all of that, they used to just care about how inexpensive could you get a new customer. And then they learned a very important lesson, which is that anyone can trick anyone into buying something one time. And what they really should be looking for are brands that have awesome retention. This chart and the next one I'll show is from a platform called Nozzle. Free endorsement for them. They have a 14-day free trial. Go sign up for it, pull this data. Because it's not only going to show you your repeat, okay, but it's going to show you like, how are you retaining customers further and further down the funnel? And then the other thing that's really exciting is it shows you your cohort data. If you're kind of in the weeds with D2C, you see this, but this basically shows you, hey, in July of 2023, we got 2,000 new customers. This is super seasonal business, by the way. We're not doing a bad job. But, we got 2,000, new customers. Well, in month 0, on average, those customers were worth $25, right? 6 months later, those customers are worth on average $36.79. That is a 40% increase in lifetime value in 6 months, right? So now when I think about ROAS and advertising and my acquisition cost, I'm thinking of it on a totally different way. It's no longer transactional, right? It has perspective. So, 25 to 35% monthly repeat, that's a good place to be as a flat measurement. Everyone on this call, I'm going to email the founder of Nozzle and be like, how many trials did you get yesterday? Because again, it's a 14-day free trial. It's a great piece of software. It's a little expensive to have in the long term for a small brand, but just pulse in and see what it tells you. So, that's really, when we look at these things evolving over time, that's what we're looking for, right? And this model, again, this is just a G sheet with the other 9 columns hidden, and it's 9 more months, and we see how these metrics continue to develop, over time. So, I think like a lot of these questions, what's a strong target conversion rate for sponsored display campaigns for a shelf-stable food product? Sponsored display is going to be more expensive than a regular sponsored product placement. So you'd want it to be at least in this, 8 to 10% range, preferably even higher than that.
Can you just explain again what sponsored display is? I saw that question. I just want to make sure everyone knows.
Totally. So if you search for, if you do a search on Amazon, you see, primarily most of the ads are just product ads, right? Sponsored product ads. They're everywhere, and that's just a featured product. It just shows it as a listing and just as sponsored right above it. Sponsored display is all of the graphic ads and the video ads and things that you see all over Amazon, right? And it's a very exciting advertising product. As Amazon has announced, they're going to start having commercials on Prime Video and everything starting later this month. Like, those are not going to be Geico commercials. They're going to be commercials for like whoever's running those ads on Amazon. So it's actually going to be very interesting to see what we see. So sponsored display, I would not consider that an early stage tactic, for sure. You can run it selectively, for repeat and stuff like that. I think, so that ends up being important. A couple of other questions, someone asked, can you see this type of data on Vendor Central? You can selectively, Vendor Central if you're asking that question, you're either kind of a legacy brand or you're calling in for big CPG. And so, Vendor Central really does not have the type of data, nor does it have the connectivity. Just so everyone understands, most of us, when we sell FBA, we're talking about Seller Central. That means you're on Amazon, you're sending them inventory and stuff like that. You can also be a vendor for Amazon. That's increasingly rare these days. Generally, you have to be doing 10 million or more to
And
come into
Leon,
that.
just to confirm, like if somebody's looking for their conversion rate for organic or their ad conversion rate, but that they have that accessible to them in their own, or where would somebody find that?
Yeah, totally. So, it's just under business reports. You can look at the sales over time. It will show that, for if you go into the advertising, console and the campaign manager on Amazon, they actually don't show it as a metric. Like you just have to do clicks and orders and manually calculate that. So if you're self-managing, you do have to get in and do some of the math and stuff like that. But you could really kind of take this and take the base of this model and really build it out into like, okay, well, here's where I've been historically, and here's where I want to go, and think about like, how do we want to improve? What should we do, and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And someone asked, I think before I move on, I mean, someone says, when conversion misses the target, how do we tell if it's due to product design or if it's due to Amazon agency? I would definitely, like, if you're not hitting these targets, one thing to really get into, if you have an agency partner, sounds like you do in this instance, is like, where's the money going? Like, that's like my team, it's like the number one thing. They probably hate it, but it's like I go into it and I'm just like, where's the money going? Like sort by spend. And that reveals like, oh my gosh, we're spending so much money on this one term, we're not converting anywhere. But maybe you see further down the list, whoa, we have like a 30% conversion rate here. Let's go and start to concentrate our spend, right? Because what you should be doing, with advertising is really, looking at it like this is a chart going from left to right of like how you would build that advertising strategy starting from month one, right? Just like we do in that model, right? In month one, we're kind of on the left, we're in research mode, right? Hey, maybe you make something really specific like a mushroom coffee. And so we need to go understand, hey, how do we perform against people searching for mushroom coffee? How do we perform against Four Sigmatic and category leaders? How do we perform against longer tail stuff, et cetera? And advertising is this iterative process, right? Again, we're looking for that 8 to 10% conversion rate right out of the gate. So we may find something, it's like we got one click and one sale, and cool, we're going to isolate that. We're going to move it to an exact match and put it in a performance campaign because we want to concentrate our spend as much as we can, right? And so, again, your advertising should not be wasteful. One thing we look at, good question to ask if you have an agency partner, what percent of our spend actually went towards sales last month, right? So if we took all the terms you spent money on, what percentage of them actually drove a sale, right? We aim for 75 to 80% efficacy of advertising spend, meaning you're wasting at most 25% doing testing, or maybe, hey, this one just doesn't work that well, blah, 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 blah. So really, like most of your dollars should be, getting used for things that work over time. And your broad match, your phrase match, just all the testing mechanisms with Amazon, you should always be testing in the background, always be testing, but like it really should be a smaller and smaller part of your spend, right? And so that is again, how you're going to inform this model. Hey, we're going more deep and more narrow, so our conversion is going up. Because we're going deep and narrow, Amazon says, oh, these guys worked really, really well for mushroom coffee. They're going to start to rank on page one. Well, guess what? Your organic traffic is really going to pick up, as you start to ramp, and rank for those things. So all this stuff is tied together, right? Advertising efficacy drives your organic traffic because Amazon, again, it just wants to show people what it thinks they're going to sell. If you're proving that out, great. If not, you have challenges. So yeah, and I think, for advertising, to that end, we'll come back to the creative stuff. This is an important part of it. This is also typically how we would structure things, from the beginning. Again, like you see keyword ads. So keyword ads are, hey, I searched for mushroom coffee on Amazon. These are all the brands that show up in their sponsored product placements. Product ads are, hey, I clicked on Four Sigmatic because I've heard of them. And then I scroll down the page and I start seeing ads, right? Those are ads on the product pages. So, you really, should be looking at it and having a conversation of like, if you're having a conversation or if you're looking and saying my ROAS is high or low, or someone's reporting that to you, you should really dig in, to where the money's being spent. How have we structured this? What are we learning? How are we moving, more and more towards, efficiency in our spend? And most importantly, if you're an early stage CPG brand, this is a great way to just prove out your product, and just say like, hey, we build product ads against key competitors. And if we get that click off of a Four Sigmatic product page, we convert like 40% of the time. So we know that Four Sigmatic customers are going to switch to our brand. Now we can just figure out how to scale that in everything we do, not just Amazon. Right. So, again, I'm not going to go super deep into the world of Amazon advertising. I think it's discussed a lot. I'm not going to say too much, but a lot. We can definitely have a follow-up and talk directly into it. But, again, this structure, this process, you see our CPCs reduce 30 to 50% over time. Your organic traffic grows, and that basically builds the longer tail of this model towards efficiency, towards profitability, right? The last thing, in the question of how do we make all this perform the way that we want it to, really is creative strategy. I have a very simple way of explaining how to think about your Amazon listing. I tell people that to think of Amazon as a dating app. So, if you're using a dating app, you're on your phone, you're going to find a profile of someone that you might like. And what are you going to do? You're going to go swipe, swipe, swipe. You're going to decide if you're going to keep going or you're just going to move on. This is how people engage with Amazon, right? If someone comes to your page and they're like, oh, this looks interesting, swipe. Oh, this is what the side of it looks like. Swipe. This is what the top of it looks like. Swipe. Okay, I'm just moving on. People aren't going to give you a bunch of time. You should really think about, what is the information that you're presenting, the order in which you're presenting it. We typically find a structure like this works really well. Product renders, that one's really obvious. So like nutrition facts and ingredients, this is all examples from like a water brand. We picked the most like vanilla thing. But basically like, because we know if we're in natural, people want to know like, hey, is this non-GMO or is this BPA free? In the case of water, nutrition facts aren't necessarily as important as like the mineral analysis. People nerd out on stuff like that. So you want to tell someone right up front, like, oh, this doesn't have any sugar in it. And I see that it doesn't have erythritol. That's awesome because I have a bad reaction to that or whatever, right? Like people like to think that they're authorities on their own diets. So give them that information. Right? Again, really easy to access, really easy to digest. The first question many people have about snacks and stuff, if you're in that space, is, hey, like, how much sugar's in this? How much protein's in this? Give that to them immediately. The product overview is another one. Again, in the world of water, it's super interesting, but also straightforward. Generally, these are stories about like what is for this water, here's where it came from. It came from Fiji. We made this for a client that like their water comes from Mount Fuji in Japan. It's such a cool story, and telling that story. So basically, like the lifestyle play that you're trying to make, what is like the main, benefit proposition of the product. And this can definitely be multiple images that speaks to the quality. If there's a sourcing story, it's very exciting. But again, it's like a bite-sized piece of content that keeps people going, and they keep engaging with the brand. And then you get into the core attributes, the RTBs, the reasons to buy, the reasons to believe, and this is really like, okay, like it's important for Amazon listings to acknowledge where that customer is coming from. Many brands will build their listing and go, okay, I got my brand guide. These are all my key talking points. And, and this is a great reflection of my brand. Well, in reality, the person that just stumbled on your page was maybe just looking at your number one competitor, or they already buy something in the space and they're looking to make a change. So, your core attributes, when you talk about the story and stuff like that, you should bring into mind the fact that, people were basically just looking at something else. So it's not like, who are you? But it's also, why are you better? So this is one that's, what are the key better thans versus the category? What are some of the things you may be doing unique or differently? We know boxed water. It's like, oh, this one's like super small and cute. It's super recyclable, no BPA, and it's just pure water, very, very simple in the water space. And then obviously reviews and testimonials. These are all graphics we made. Yeah. And, so again, like, putting it in someone else's words, right? Why should you love it? Advocacy is the number one thing that drives, explosive growth in CPG, right? If people are like, this is a great product, people start buying it. So it's that push versus the pull. So, customer reviews and testimonials, press excerpts and stuff like that are really, really important here. So we're going to share this deck, right, Daniel?
Yeah, we'll share the whole recording out on our Vimeo page, probably up on our YouTube as well. Leon, one thing that I learned about the reviews is like, I mean, me as a consumer, if I go on a page for product and there are like 13 reviews, I'm not going to buy it. I'm like, oh, there's a fake thing if it has a lot of good reviews or whatever. What I'd heard, I think, from you and a lot of people is like, you want to get to about 50 reviews before the advertising can be really effective spend. Is that right?
Yep, totally.
And I think there are a bunch of ways you can get to 50 reviews, but at least for me, the most effective one was ask your friends. Like probably somebody from Amazon would not love to hear us say that, but I think what a lot of brands end up doing is like, hey, please go buy my product, put a review on there, and I can reimburse you for the product. And you can get that done in just a month or two and get to the threshold you need to be at, where then when you're doing the advertising, it then can have the effect that it's supposed to have.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think, and there's a lot of ways to accomplish that. So, I remember Melissa from Rise Brewing. I always loved how consistent she was when I was helping them at one point. We would get on a call with someone new, and like before she even got into it, she would say, okay, everyone, we're so excited to work with you. The first thing is everyone go buy a case of Rise coffee off of Amazon and leave us a review and just put it on your invoice. So like if you just do stuff like that consistently, I remember she told me, she's like, we've gotten hundreds of reviews just from me doing this on like the sales team and the ops agency and like all of that over time, right? So, that's a really good way to do it. You can ask friends and family and stuff like that. The most important thing in the world of reviews is like, don't tell people to just go leave a review. It's like, hey, you need to buy it. You need to let Amazon deliver it. And then you can leave a review a few days later. If you take those simple precautions, Amazon won't flag the listing and stuff like that. So
And I know
that's,
I've seen people do like there's a Vine program you can send free product,
yeah,
but the reviews you get there, some of them are just for like
yeah.
people who just don't want your product category. Like you could send them one of these waters and then they'd be like, nah, I only like soda, 1 star. You're like, well, I mean, that's not fair at all, but there's nothing you can do about it. It's a free review, you know?
So there's a lot. So Amazon has the Vine program. Most people are probably familiar. You can get early reviews, and Amazon is supposed to be accepting people that leave quality reviews in the category that your product's listed in. Number one, make sure your product's listed in the right category, which sometimes early on it's not. Number two, yeah, I'm like, hey, let's test the waters. You can do up to 30 units. I'm like, let's do 10. We'll see how that comes back, and if it's good, we'll do the other 20. Because it is risky. We see where there's one thing I read about where a guy was a Vine reviewer on Amazon because you get all this free stuff, and he owned a convenience store. So he would just write Vine reviews all the time because he got all this free product and he was just making a bunch of money off of selling the stuff. So like it's definitely Amazon can help you, but again, yeah, friends, family, social media, stuff like that. Again, it's scrappy, it's practical, and that's a good early way. But we do see, I think a lot of brand owners aspire to have that listing that has thousands of reviews and stuff like that. Number one, review conversion on Amazon has gone down drastically over time. I don't think it's not a big surprise. It's kind of hard to get people to say something nice in this country most of the time. So it's way easier to get bad reviews than good reviews. So, but overall review growth is slower than it used to be. So like we do see where, hey, if we get to like, 40 to 50 reviews, things have really improved. We see some of those marked improvements in the model that we talked about, and certainly past 100, you're just good. So don't let that deter you for sure. So we kind of went through this. I mean, we talked through repeat and retention and everything. This is my questions. You can find me here, preferably in the Tuamotus, deep in the South Pacific. But I think we have like 5 minutes, and I can just lightning round some of these questions that people have.
Do it. And then I just want to remind everybody, yeah, I mean, Daybreak is our official Amazon agency partner. And the reason for that is because Leon obviously knows his stuff. You've just heard it, but also their retainer is the most affordable one that I've heard from anybody. I kind of couldn't believe it that, I mean, they do all that creative for you and get you set up. And I think spend your advertising in a really responsible way that you're going to understand, and they're not going to overpromise something that they can't deliver. So if anybody wants to reach out to him, his email is listed here. I really recommend it. I had a wonderful experience working with him. So yeah, Leon, do you want to just rapid fire a bunch of the remaining questions?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, someone asked a good question, which is, what are some of the pitfalls? How do people fail and how can we avoid it? I think that a lot of the pitfalls are not looking at this data, and spending a lot of money and not working and not diagnosing why, right? If you are, again, a lot of times it's like CPG is fairly simple. I'll keep using, mushroom coffee, because we have a mushroom coffee client. It's a challenging space. But like we know, hey, if we're buying this, term, if we're buying in this category, this is what we make. So if we're not converting, it's not an advertising problem, right? Someone searches for mushroom coffee, we make sure we're there. Do you get the click, and you're just not getting the sales? That's when you need to start to take a look at your pricing, your listings. How are they really set up? What is the story that you're telling people? I would also play with your pricing. If you work through some of those things, you feel good about it. Okay, well, like we are much more expensive than the category. How much is this making a difference, right? One really important thing about Amazon, someone searches for mushroom coffee. Well, Amazon's going to show your ad whether that person is looking for the cheapest thing that's there or the most premium, cool, or innovative organic thing that's there, right? And your ad's going to show either way. So, so that's one thing where, sometimes if you're more on the more premium side, you have to look at, okay, who else is showing up in some of my search results, and stuff like that. So that's one. I think, are there certain categories of products in CPG you can have just not a good fit for Amazon? Yeah, I mean, frozen and perishable is really hard. I'm on Amazon. I probably, honestly worked through more perishable frozen brands. We put Good Culture on Amazon for a while if you needed your cottage cheese shipped to your front door by Amazon and stuff like that. And it's just really challenging. One of those reasons is that Amazon will give anyone a refund for anything, and so, oh, this was on my front porch for, 2 hours and I think it's spoiled. Amazon's just going to give them a refund. You're out of fortune. It's very challenging, right? So pre-COVID, Amazon was working on a way to actually support frozen and perishable shipping through FBA. They've since abandoned those efforts. So, so that's one that's challenging. Beverage is also challenging. I mean, I think, we had some good results with Daniel, but it's also just, hey, you're trying to sell. Like if someone came up to me and you want, hey, do you want to try this drink? Yes. Like, okay, you have to buy 12 of them. It's like simple logic that's a steep hill to climb, right? So things like that versus like a snack, like a protein bar. Hey, we can have a 6-pack sampler for a protein bar, stuff like that. I think, yeah, I mean, for new CPG food brand on Amazon, what is ballpark realistic year one revenue projection? I mean, you should be looking at, if you're starting out doing, kind of building a model around that, spending $2,000 a month, hopefully, you're getting that into 5 figures. Hopefully you have a good repeat rate and you see an opportunity to go beyond that. But you should be able to see with Amazon, hey, we're spending a flat amount of money on ads month over month, and our total sales are increasing, right? And that is why we look at repeat closely. That's why organic traffic is so important. That's what drives those things. Ads are just going to become more expensive over time, right? So yeah, I think the last question here. This is an important one for brands that are in Whole Foods. Have you been able to do paid search for Whole Foods on Amazon for your frozen refrigerated brands? Yes, that is true. In that instance, it is the same for everyone. It's actually very simple. You just need to go to Amazon and just start an advertising account. We'll figure out a way to circulate the link that people can go to. But if you start an ad account that's not associated with a brand or a seller account, you actually only advertise products that are shipped from and sold by Amazon or Whole Foods. So you can immediately start advertising your products. So yeah. So for Ithaca, yeah, totally. I mean, like, Slack me. I have the link. If you just, send me a Slack on the Startup CPG thing, I'll send you the link for that. Amazon Fresh is the same. So they actually work together. So it's kind of annoying because if you have a product that's on Amazon Fresh and Whole Foods, you just run one ad and you have no idea if it's going to Fresh or Whole Foods. So Amazon's going to is going to figure that out. They've had a lot of trouble with that ad product. So yeah.
Leon, one question that came in a few times was just about your rates. I like the stuff that I don't like to see people doing is spending like $5,000 a month with some of the big agencies that, like, for an early brand, it's going to be, well, huge expense versus your ad budget. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know if, Leon, you can give specific numbers. Like, I know it's around, a couple $1,000, not $5,000.
Yeah, totally. So, look, it does vary because some brands come to us and they're like, hey, we just barely have enough money, and some are like, we just got an investment. So typically, we are, $2,300 to $2,500 a month. At the outset for Amazon, we have like a 90-day kind of introductory retainer that is at that rate. After 90 days, we typically, look to see if we can find efficiency in that, or find a model that works more for longer term management. The reason being, that a lot of the work's in the upfront, building the model, building the creative, like things like that. When we get into that groove and everything, our team is just added in the background. It's kind of worked into our ongoing, operations and everything. It's a little bit less of a lift, frankly. So typically that's able to come down, call it anywhere from like 10 to 30% or something like that. So, again, depends on the budget, the size of the catalog and stuff like that. We have a client that has 1,000 items, so they're on a higher retainer than the like scrappy startup with a single ASIN, right? So, yeah, but I mean, overall, look, we try to price it what we think is fair. We try to work with people as much as we can, rather than setting this like firm high number that only select people can hit, right? A lot of that business, when I first started Daybreak, I just didn't think there was a good solution, for brands at this stage or of this size. And I think, this is year 5 for us. And I think we were right. I think we found a need. So, our goal is to service it to the best of our ability.
Yes, I agree from having worked with you. So I'm sorry we didn't get to all of the questions. I think probably Leon is a nice guy. If you Slack him your question, if we didn't get to it, he'll probably respond to you on the Startup CPG Slack. Just Leon Lewis. If you're not on it already, you can sign up at startupcpg.com and we'll send you the link. And maybe if you're extra nice, Leon will play you some tunes off his many ukuleles that you see back there. And if you're extra nice, me and him can play a duet maybe at Expo West. So thank you guys, everybody, for all of the great questions. I learned a lot. Thank you, Leon. And we'll post the recording on our Vimeo page shortly, probably the next day or two, and then also on our YouTube.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, guys. All right.
Thank you, Leon.
Later on.
Bye, everyone.